Yes, I know this is an incredibly controversial topic. However, I do feel it needs to be discussed within our community. Because if you studied African history, you'd notice a myriad of matrilineal societies within the continent. Because of Africa's history of colonization, some have questioned the value of matrilineal systems. Is it warranted? What up, African world? It's Home Team here, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. If you like these videos and want to help in its continued production, consider supporting the Home Team on patreon.com. I'm honestly not trying to offend anybody. Let's face it, women in this video. I simply want to discuss a topic that needs more understanding and context. It's not intended to be a bashing video of men or women. If anything, it's more of a discussion on how we can understand the systems of our ancestors better. If you've been following me for some time, you may know that I believe the main ingredient to Africa's downfall was African diversity. I think it's clear as day when you actually study Africa. So why this topic? As a Western man who's been bathed in and embraced a patriarchal model myself, I imagine other Western Afro-descended men have done so as well. I think it's tempting to read African history as a Western Afro-descended man and dismiss matrilineal African societies euphemistically as less effective. Admittedly, I rarely see this topic being brought up, but we do have discussions within our community that parallels the discussion we're having today. So I think we should seriously address the underlining threads of thought. I think in general, there is a misunderstanding of how matrilineal systems were expressed in Africa. For example, matrilineal systems within Africa didn't necessarily denote women being in power. The salience of these matrilineal systems were that women were intrinsically involved in the formation of power. They accomplished this by having access to powerful men they either married, created, or were born into. Throughout many African societies, it was the women who were the kingmakers. One of the most interesting examples of this was ancient Kush. I picked Kush because most of us would agree that it was one of the greatest ancient African civilizations on the continent. In ancient Kush, you weren't royalty because of your father's line in a patrilineal sense. You were royalty because of who your mother was. The Kushite emphasis on female ancestors when addressing King Taharka speaks very deeply to how women were intimately involved in the formation of power. He, Amun-Ra, appointed for him his son, the son of Re, Taharko, may he live forever, a king, to commemorate his Amun name, to embellish his monuments, to maintain his status, to inscribe his name on the temple, to call out the names of his foremothers, to establish funerary offering for them, and to give them numerous Ka servants, rich in all things. Now, in Western society, in a sort of Abrahamic way, I would say, we're so used to hearing and saying forefathers. However, what we see from ancient Kush is that they mention forefathers and foremothers. Men and women were both founding entities of power. I mean, that's a completely antithetical model to what we have today. An argument can be made that the West can actually learn something from ancient Kush. However, like any socio-political model, it has its flaws. Admittedly, the strongest argument I've ever heard that critiqued one matrilineal system on the African continent came from a scholar named Chancellor Williams. He made quite the compelling point in his book, The Destruction of Black Civilization. He said that foreign elites would worm their way into African thrones by marrying Egyptian women. By doing so, because of Egypt's matrilineal system, the native mothers, who were kingmakers, would pave the way for their sons from foreign men to take the African throne and shift the culture. These alliances, after worming their way to power through the African inheritance through female line system, could then change to the Asian and Western patrilineal system. Now, I don't know if Chancellor Williams is actually preaching against matriarchal or matrilineal systems here. But this is undoubtedly the most powerful critique I've ever heard. If someone wanted to find fault in matrilineal systems, I think Chancellor Williams gives them reason to do so. However, if we truly understand the collapse of any society, we understand how layered and complex they can really be. For example, environmental issues that deteriorate a society can often masquerade as a military defeat, as scholar Jared Diamond puts it. It's an often overlooked feature of societal collapse. So I think that even if, despite our discussion, you remain committed to this idea that the proliferation of matrilineal systems caused Africa to fall, then we also have to acknowledge, based on how they were expressed in Africa, that matrilineal systems were completely functionless without men. So I think we should definitely keep that in mind. Let's be sure to consider all the meaningful threads we can when deciphering the fall of the African continent. Well, I'm all out, guys. If you like these videos and want to help in its continued production, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace.